Hi, and thanks for choosing to watch. In a previous video, I spoke at a high level about how the learning design process, ADDIE, could benefit from some of the tools and principles that design thinking can offer. Have a look at that video if you're interested. But I wanted to try and start making that a little bit more concrete by looking at some of the tools that are used. And in this video, I want to focus in on one tool, which is the how might we question phrasing. And what it is a way to positively frame some of the requirements, issues, ideas that might come in the beginning phases of the ADDIE process, and specifically the A&D process. So just to zoom in on this a little bit, in the beginning, when we're trying to understand and empathize with the client and or customer organization, we need to get as much information as we can, as fast as we can, and we need to map it all out. And the how might we question is a great way of doing this because rather than erring on the side of interview style formats where we ask hundreds of questions, and as learning designers, we're really good at that. About users, technology, learning outcomes, status of the content, parameters, barriers. Those are all really important things and can be used as a way to get thinking started. But I find that if you can borrow the how might we framing, it's easier to have a conversation as a group about the problem generally or what the learning area generally, and have people write down how might we statements about that as they go. So if, for example, you find that learners don't have access to great Wi-Fi, you might say, how might we get access to Wi-Fi for our learners? Or if we find that the content's not in a great position, we can say, how might we better frame or get our content to a place where it needs to be? And so instead of a negative phrasing like our content's not up to scratch or our learners can't use the technology, we start to look at more of a problem solving framing. And that kind of links to this theory here of growth versus fixed mindset, which is another concept for another video, or have a look at it on Google or anywhere else. It's just framing for your thinking towards the positive solutions mindset rather than the negative and what is not possible. And it's very easy, especially when learning is coming in as an intervention to solve a problem or to move the needle where there's inefficiencies. It's easy to get stuck into the negative and what's not working. And by looking at the positive framing, we can start to think about what are some of those solutions. And everyone in the room is more bought into those ideas. So as you converse in those sessions, you'll start to get lots and lots and lots of how might we questions across all the different categories and levels of thinking. What that then necessitates is prioritization, because not all solutions, not all requirements that are elicited through this process are equal. And so in another video, I'll cover how we might prioritize, but you can't stop at having the questions. You also have to start looking at what are the most important questions that we need to answer. So this also assumes that you're coming into this from quite a initial point where there's a lot of vagueness around the project. You may not be sure what kind of learning, or even if it is a learning problem in the first place. And that's where the how might we might be useful. And as you begin to prioritize, you can see actually it's data that's the biggest problem, or motivation in the workplace is the biggest problem, or technology is the biggest problem. And that's where you can start to focus in on the work that you do as a learning designer and as a client and trying to solve these problems. And as you go down the funnel and the problem space becomes more defined, you can start to look at prioritization and better solutions and start to look at how you might involve various stakeholders, which takes us back to the process that we spoke about earlier. So hopefully this tool is very useful to you. If you have any questions, please pop them down. I'd love to hear from you and look out for more. It'd be really cool to see what other parts of the design thinking process could aid learning design. Cheers for now.